Every day, there are people all over the world looking to create better lives for themselves and their families. Not gurus or overnight millionaires. These are moms or retirees or college students, everyday people who are fed up with the 9 to 5 and realize there is another way. They are Amazon sellers, they're freedom builders, and these are their stories. All right, guys, today I have on a guest, Kevin David. Kevin, what's up, man? How's it going today?
What is up, Greg? It's always so nice to talk to you, my man.
Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. Let's start off with a quick introduction. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit more just about who you are?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Kevin David. I graduated college about 5 years ago. Straight out of college, I went into kind of like the normal job role per se, kind of like what you're expected to do, at least what my parents were expecting me to do, to get a normal job out of college, kind of to go the corporate route, get kind of the safe, benefits, salary, and just what society has kind of deemed as normal. And so I got a job at a company called PwC, which is one of the biggest accounting firms in the world. And then I switched to Facebook, where I was doing consulting work, helping to build out their FTC privacy program. And I actually discovered Greg, first of all, out of anyone on Amazon. And he's kind of who introduced me to, what was possible with Amazon FBA, kind of how to replace the, quote unquote, normal job and the normal kind of 9 to 5 that a lot of people have considered to be what is a normal path to take after college. So I'm very grateful to Greg, and I'm always so happy to talk to him and you, to actually go through some of this stuff. And so I'm just trying to give back to everyone now that I have had some success with Amazon FBA.
Cool. Okay. So rewind, you went to college, you graduated. How long did you work, or do you still work like a normal, typical corporate job?
So I did about 3 years. I spent a year at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and then I spent about 2 years at Facebook. And I've been graduated for 5, so I've been working 100% for myself for about 2 years now.
Nice.
The last 3 months of my job at Facebook, and don't tell Mark Zuckerberg, but I was actually working a lot on my Amazon and some of my own businesses kind of while I was still in that 9 to 5 mode. I was really just focusing, all of my nights and all of my free time and my breaks and lunch and everything kind of devoted to Amazon FBA and, trying to free myself a little bit more to get toward that digital nomad lifestyle that I was really, wanting to achieve.
Why did you even want to become like an entrepreneur? Like you probably had like a pretty nice salary at Facebook, like a lot of people, that's like their dream job would be like to work for like the Google or Facebook or whatever else. Like why were you looking for something different?
Leaving Facebook behind, leaving kind of the big tech companies behind, it was very hard for me, and I'm sure it would be very hard for anyone. Like I remember one day they changed my oil in my car in the parking lot for free, and that same day I went to the doctor's appointment at the doctor's office at Facebook for free. And I was like, what is going on with this?
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg's incredibly smart. He realized that these people, the caliber of person that would be working at Facebook or these companies, could create businesses on their own. So they're trying to make you as comfortable as possible to stay, right? But there's just always kind of a fire that was burning inside me. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people have it where, you never really want to work for anyone else. Like you want to create something of yours, like your own baby, and grow it into this, real life thing. Because it's a really beautiful thing when you turn something from an idea into an actual real life business. And doing what you've done, including like for Jungle Scout, creating like employees and jobs for people like that, it's a beautiful thing, starting something for yourself. And I think a lot of your viewers and a lot of people understand that it's just not quite the same for some people unless it's their own. And that's kind of where I was coming from, and why I knew that I had to start something for myself.
So what did your friends and family think about you when you were telling them, hey, I'm going to go quit working for Facebook, everyone's dream job, to go do some Amazon thing?
I'll start this off with a preface. I absolutely love my family and my parents. They're so amazing. They did everything for me. They are a little bit more conventional. I think just generationally, it's much more common to, kind of be accustomed to that normal 9 to 5, get a job, get the job security, save for retirement and things like that. And, I personally have strong opinions about that. Anybody who, has seen or heard anything I've said kind of knows that. They were supportive of me, but I think like a lot of entrepreneurs experience kind of from their family and friends at first, it's kind of like, are you crazy? Like, what are you talking about? And then once you've made it, it's kind of like, hey, Kevin, how did you do this? Like, let's talk again. It's kind of like the life cycle of being an entrepreneur. At first, everyone's like, wait, what's wrong with you? And then once you've done it and you've kind of proven it to yourself and to everyone else, then everyone's kind of like, hey, how do you do that? Can I do it too?
So did you start selling on Amazon before you left your job, or you quit one day and then started?
So I wasn't actually technically selling on Amazon, but I was working on my business. For those of you who don't know much about Amazon FBA, or for those of you who do, there's kind of like a period of time where you kind of need to get things going. It's kind of the building stage where you're, doing your product research, using Jungle Scout, doing your due diligence, finding these products that are going to be successful. And it just kind of takes time to find it, to source it from manufacturers in Alibaba, right, to get it actually created at the manufacturer, and then to ship it into an Amazon FBA warehouse. And so kind of like that 1 to 3 month lag period that a lot of people do experience was the same for me. And so I kind of started full time, about a month and a half before I actually left. And then I left the first week that I started getting sales on Amazon, because for me, it was just immediate. In my very first week, I was making $1,000 a day, and we were at 62% profit margin. So right when I saw that, I put in my notice and I said, hey guys, I got to go. I love you for everything you've done, but I just got to try something on my own. And so that was kind of the day I left.
Cool. So were you scared though? That would probably be kind of scary too, right? And like with the business, you have to reinvest like cash back into it. Like, did you have some savings, or you're just like willing to take bold decisions like that, or what?
I mean, that's a great question. And, the answer to it, and what I tell, my friends and people that I help with Amazon FBA, is I tell people that it's good to have kind of a safety net that you can afford to have a roof over your head and food to eat for kind of a 3 to 6 month period. If you have, a 6 month cushion where you're not going to starve and you're not going to like freeze to death out in the cold, that's enough. With Amazon FBA, reinvesting is very important, right? Because when you build the infrastructure kind of to create these products, then they become equitable, things that you actually own and build value, because as you continue to build reviews and you build those barriers to entry and competitive advantages for other people to try to come into your niche, it truly becomes more and more valuable the longer these listings are created. So the more you can create now, as time goes on, they become more and more valuable, which is very valuable when it comes to if you ever are going to sell your account, and many more considerations. But for me, it wasn't really a big deal.
So you just quit the dream job at Facebook. You started making $1,000 a day. What kind of, were you doing private label or wholesale or retail arbitrage or what? Tell us a little bit more about what methods you were using to sell on Amazon.
So I'm a big fan, just entrepreneurially, about doing research up front, because anything you do entrepreneurially is going to take time. And a lot of people, I think, rush into things, or they can rush into something before kind of doing their due diligence, right? So I'm not the type of person that's going to dabble into all of the different methods, right? I'm not doing tactical arbitrage. I'm not doing retail arbitrage. I'm not doing online. I'm not doing wholesale. So I looked into each of those different options very closely before I decided where I was going to go all in. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of other very successful entrepreneurs on Amazon FBA, private label is really the place that you can create the longest term, most profitable, sustainable business that has like the kind of equity that you want, creating something that, has value if you do ever want to sell, or, a variety of other different factors. Just like, for example, wholesale, in my opinion, is, it's possible to be successful in it, but Amazon is created in such a way where they leverage sellers against each other kind of to give you those bargain basement prices. And so if you have, no brand recognition or, luxury type packaging or anything that you're differentiating yourself from a private label perspective, wholesale can kind of just be like a race to the bottom in some ways, in my opinion. It's much more difficult to have the profit margins that you're looking for unless you go the private label path. So I just went 100% all in on private label. I've never even dabbled in the other ones after doing a significant amount of research as to where I wanted to focus my efforts.
So it sounded like things started off going really well. Tell us about some like the hardships that you went through, or some like the little horror stories.
So some of this stuff for me was not necessarily what it would be for other people, but I decided to launch with some friends because, we were in kind of the same place in our lives, and there was 3 of us. It was somewhat complicated as far as like Amazon FBA specifically has a lot of moving pieces. So like, and when we were each launching our own products in one account, it was very difficult to, account for all of the different expenses and revenues and which was coming from which, and which, PVC expenses were to hit which person. So it was difficult at first kind of learning how to be on a team with people, especially from an accounting perspective. With any entrepreneurial venture, whether it's Amazon FBA, affiliate marketing, if you're doing a startup, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're creating something on your own, there just are things that happen. There are things that come up. There are things that go wrong. And so, a very vital portion of being an entrepreneur is kind of dealing with that. And I remember one specific situation where our inventory got basically stuck in the Chinese customs. And so we just had no idea what to do because we were brand new. We didn't really have what I think is the most important part of being successful on Amazon FBA, which is that kind of community, right? Like the Jungle Scout community, whatever community that you do join, having people in the same situation as you who've been through these same things, who've actually kind of experienced all of the different problems that can come up in any business is so vital. And having a mentor or just people who kind of are in the same spot. And so, when that happened, I got super active on all the Facebook groups, right? I was hunting everyone down. I probably messaged you like 5 times and you never saw them, but I was basically just reaching out to people and saying, hey, my stuff is stuck at the Chinese port. What should I do? And so I finally got a hold of someone who kind of experienced that before. He had a contact that actually worked at that specific port that we worked with, who spoke English. And it was so much easier and so much better to kind of get that done. And it's just an important lesson for any entrepreneur that nothing can actually stop you. Nothing, unless you let it, right? So like nothing, I never felt in my Amazon FBA journey, hopeless or anything. As an entrepreneur, you kind of have to get over that, right? So you have to just figure it out no matter what. And that's why having a good team and a good community is so important.
So do you still have partners with your business now?
So I actually bought out my 2 original partners from our original Amazon account. And I partnered with a new partner full-time who actually has 50% ownership of all of my different Amazon accounts. And so he runs a lot of the logistics. I found out early that my personal strength was not in sourcing. I don't really enjoy personally doing the sourcing, dealing with the manufacturers and that aspect of the business. And so he was much more willing or better, whatever you want to call it, at doing that. And so he decided to do that. He handles the product photography. I find all the products and I do the PPC. And so we have kind of a nice little split that we've worked out to cater to our strengths. I'm much better at the more analytical, kind of creative portions of it, because finding products and doing PPC is as much as an art as it is a science. I'm sure you know that as much as anyone. I think finding people to work with, if you do like working with people and to kind of play off each other's strengths, is very important.
What types of advice do you have for people about partnerships? Because they can be a tricky thing. It sounds like you've probably learned some really good lessons. Can you share some of those with the listeners?
I think working with people is very important. I think doing it for the wrong reasons, though, is something that you should be very cautious of. I don't think you should partner just to partner, right? You want to find people, first of all, that you trust. Because I've been very fortunate. I've never had a partner with any type of like bad situation where people were like stealing or doing anything like, malicious. I've never had that. So I can't speak to that. But I have had partners that kind of were more just partners for the sake of partners because we were friends, rather than actually necessarily adding kind of a synergistic element where 1 + 1 = 3. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to understand what your strengths are and to really like literally write that out, because it was super important to me. Like I've kind of always been like, yeah, I'm okay at doing this or that, but you don't really understand it until you kind of plot it out. Like, what am I good at? What do I enjoy? What do I need help with? And then kind of, work from there in your network, or, just go out and bother people. Like the first way that I even found Greg was, just relentlessly messaging him and his whole team until he finally responded. So the point is, find these people. And if you have strengths, play to them, and find people who, have strengths as well and play to that. And if you're going to form a partnership, specifically with Amazon FBA, I would say from a very pragmatic perspective, odd numbers of people is much more difficult, especially if you have your own individual products, just because there's storage fees, there's fulfillment fees, there's PPC, and it's very difficult to trace all that down individually. So if I was going to do it again, I would say, 50-50, 100% of the way, where you share all costs and you share all revenue. It's just much, much easier.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points. And I like that you brought up the point again about the 2 people with skill sets that really complement each other. I used to be very guilty of this. I still am a little bit, about like kind of short-term thinking, so you think like, oh, it'd be fun to work on this with my buddy, for the next few months, kind of see what happens. It's like, well, you have to kind of think about from day one, if this does turn out to be quite successful, do you have kind of like, some written agreements in place and about this stuff? And will you guys, do your skill sets kind of complement each other well? So think about that. All right, cool. So you gave us some great insight into your business. Sounds like you have a good partner now that really complements your particular skill sets. You want to give us a little insight of like where the business is at today, either like revenue numbers or how many SKUs you have or anything like that?
I personally decided early, and I'll give kind of a little liability prefix here. I personally have a strong feeling about obfuscating or at least mitigating and spreading out risk. So one of the inherent risks with Amazon FBA is that Amazon has too much ownership, right? Like if they deem, an IP infringement or any number of different things that you kind of bring the hammer down on you as a seller, it's very important to, in my opinion, to kind of spread that risk. And so I decided early to kind of create multiple Amazon accounts. And so Amazon will let you have one to two additional accounts, which they say is okay. Right. And so we'll just go from here saying that I have 3 accounts. And so kind of the revenue numbers that we were kind of going for early was $1,000 a day. And since we hit that almost immediately, really our kind of mentality changed about that. And so we were trying to get, okay, let's get to 2,000 a day. How many SKUs do we have to add to get to 2,000 a day? And so, it happened kind of slower at first, but once we understood and once we kind of had the logistical infrastructure supply lines in place and kind of the know-how, it ranked up much faster. So we went from initially launching 7 products at once. 15 months later, we are at, I think, 74 SKUs spread across a number of different accounts. We're doing, 10 grand a day, give or take. And then during Christmas, obviously it's significantly more than that just for any seller on Amazon. Q4, as I'm sure, your viewers have seen, is absolutely insane for a lot of sellers, especially if you have any type of gift orientation. So if you have holiday specific, you can expect 2 to 10 times sales for Q4, for Mother's Day, for whatever your specific niche is related to. And so we do much better during Q4, but give or take, spread across all the accounts between 10 grand a day, give or take.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's incredible. And after 2 years time, right? Or
it's been about 16 months. And that was the day we launched. So I was learning for about 2 months before that. So it's been, a year and a half, 2 years since we kind of really devoted ourselves to the Amazon FBA world. Yeah.
Talk to us for a minute about cash flow, because when you scale at that rate, I've found, and most people find, that cash flow and having cash invest in new inventory is like one of the most difficult parts.
Sure.
Do you have any tips or advice or anything you'd talk about with that?
This is definitely a common theme that a lot of people struggle with. When I was first starting, I had the same struggles. One of the best ways that I've found, right, and this is, again, contingent, you kind of have to know yourself, because some people can get credit cards and they can be completely responsible with them and use them like in a beautiful, way that builds businesses. And some people are not necessarily as responsible with them. So you have to know yourself. But I knew myself. I knew that I was getting these credit cards specifically for a purpose. And so I got a 0%, 15-month APR interest-free credit card, which is the best possible way to get a loan, in my opinion. Because not only are you earning the rewards points that let you travel for free, right? I think you and I could probably talk about traveling for free on credit cards for another interview, for an entire interview. But, if you can get a 15 to 22 month zero APR credit card, which is very possible and it exists, it's very easily attainable in the United States. That is what we use to get started on Amazon FBA. And, if you have a reasonable credit score, you can get a fine limit. If, let's just say, for example, that you're not from the USA or you don't have good credit score, or you don't have that option available, right? There's always additional options. PayPal lending and Cabbage are 2 options that I've heard of people using. I think Cabbage has a little bit more predatory of a lending rate. But from the research I've done, if you aren't able to get those 0% APR credit cards, then PayPal lending was generally the best rates for people that didn't have those other options. Once you kind of start to get some sales, Amazon pays out every 2 weeks. So you can just basically immediately reinvest that into new inventory. So just don't let it stop you, I guess is my point. There's always a way, even if you have to borrow money from friends and family. I don't suggest that, because I like to keep it all kind of accountable to me. But the point of the matter is, don't let it stop you no matter what, right? Cash flow is just another hurdle that you have to solve as an entrepreneur.
So then if you go the credit card route, were you paying were you getting your suppliers to accept PayPal, or would you use like that Alipay or?
So Trade Assurance and Alipay and playing through those. I don't personally do that just because I'm kind of brand committed to PayPal. Like, it's not like I do it for like some reason like that I have, heard horror stories about Alipay or anything like that. I think if you are going to go the trade assurance route and the Alipay route, an important thing to note is communicate with your supplier in the Ali chat, because what they review, if there ever is anything kind of that goes awry, they review those chat logs, right? So they can see exactly what you asked for, the specs and things like that. So if you are going to go the trade assurance route instead of PayPal, make sure you actually communicate in the Ali chat, the Alibaba chat, because if anything does go wrong, it could save you down the line. I use PayPal personally. The fees and rates and things like that are generally not that different. And just as an aside, so people know, when you do pay with a credit card, there is generally an additional fee associated with PayPal or whatever it is, just because it costs more for the creditors and the transactors and all of the different people involved to actually facilitate that transaction to do that. But I would actually argue that at least for the sample, for the 30%, it's actually worth it to pay that fee, because if for whatever reason, let's say that Alibaba or PayPal denies your claim, like you say, hey, like they stole my money, they didn't give me anything, whatever. PayPal, if they do deny that, you have a second route, a second plan of action to dispute it with your credit card company, which gives you that additional kind of safety net if something were to go wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about that before, but that would give you like 2 layers of assurance,
And
especially if you're using like Amex, they'll like side with the card holder like any day,
Because I actually had a situation kind of early in my career that would have been devastating, right? Because one terrible situation where you lose that 30%, not only have you lost that money, but you've probably lost a lot of passion and momentum that you were building, creating this business, because you're saying, hey, like I just got screwed, I can't do it anymore, right? So don't let that happen to yourself. Take those extra precautions, spend that extra 2.5% or whatever it is, because I actually literally had a case where PayPal decided against me because the manufacturer snuck in this like little quote that somehow voided our ability to make a claim on goods and services. And I disputed it with my credit card and I got the money back. So it's like, it's worth it to you guys. 2.5% is definitely worth saving your entire investment.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Tell us about the problem you ran into with the factory, and if there's any lessons we could learn from it.
Sure. So there's a specific phrase that I think this factory must have been trying to fraud people with, that if you included it in a purchase order note in a PayPal transaction, I think it was something about custom orders. I can go back and find the exact verbiage. I don't think this is a very common thing. So, anyone who's watching this, don't think that your supplier is trying to screw you over on PayPal or anything like that. But they must have read the terms of service very closely, and they slipped in kind of a term that basically voided the guarantee that goods and services provides on PayPal. And so when I made the claim, they read that purchase order note that somehow voided PayPal's ability to side with me. But it didn't matter because I just disputed it with my credit card. They sided with me. They forced it out of the PayPal of the fraudulent Chinese manufacturer, and I got my money back literally within like a few days. When if I hadn't have paid that extra 2.5%, I may never have even gotten started on Amazon, because it would have been such like a devastating situation.
You never got the products at all, or there was quality issues, or?
Yeah, so there was some quality issues. Basically, what we were seeing looked nothing like what we were expecting. So again, it doesn't happen very often, but like, Greg talks about in his $1 Million Cake Study, and like, some of the other guys who are out there doing, good work on Amazon, it's incredibly important to do things in a succinct and systematic way. And what I mean by that is inspections, right? So just because a manufacturer sends you like a beautiful looking high quality sample does not necessarily mean that the mass order produced units are going to have that same level of quality, which is why it's so incredibly important to actually, make sure that you're doing your due diligence, getting an inspection from a third party, right? It's only like $100 a day for one person to go out for an entire day, and they'll check like specifics about, if it's electronics, they'll check very specific things that you outline, and like they have a set of standards for the most part, right? I share a specific inspection service that I use, but I'm sure, you could share one as well. It's so important to do that because they can take a look at all this stuff in China without you having to actually travel all the way to China and look at this stuff. So just get an inspection, take it from me, never ever skip out on that $100, because it's so worth it.
seems like you went through some hurdles, but overall it's been very positive, and I'm sure part of your attitude is a big part of that. Where tell us a little bit more about today, like how your life has changed because of you deciding to make those career choices at the end of the day. And looking back, was that still a good decision? Would have you done anything differently? Give us a little insight.
Looking back, I would have definitely done something differently. I definitely would have made the same decision. So, parents might want their kids to cover their ears for this part, but I personally feel that if you know what you're passionate about, and I knew I was passionate about building an online business, if I had done it all over again, I probably would have focused on that much sooner. And that may have meant, not going the college route. Because I knew that I was passionate about online business. I knew that I was passionate about communicating with people, building communities, some of the things that I've been managing to do. Now that I'm a little bit older, I think it would have been a beautiful thing if I could have had the same passion, drive, and kind of initial momentum that I had a little bit later in life, maybe if I was a little bit younger. So if I would have done it again, I would have started earlier. As to the initial part of your question, my life has completely changed because when I was working at PwC or Facebook, right? PwC, I think we got two weeks a year for vacation, which is so crazy. If you become an entrepreneur, you realize how not normal that normal seeming thing is. It's to have someone else tell you, that you can only have 2 out of 52 weeks a year to do whatever you want. And so when I was at PwC, I thought it was normal. It's all I knew. Human nature is funny like that. You kind of just get used to things. And if it seems normal and everyone else thinks it's normal, you start to think it's normal too. And so then, I just kind of had this weird inkling in the back of my head, like, this isn't normal. Like, you should be able to do whatever you want. And so, how is my life different now? So I travel for about 6 months a year. 6 to 9 months a year. And then I spend 3 to 6 months in the United States building my business. And so for about 3 months, give or take a year, I work, 30 to 40 hour weeks from wherever I want. Like, I work at Starbucks a lot, or Panera, or just, one of those places with good internet that has a nice ambiance. I personally don't see the need to get an office yet. I have 23 virtual assistants that I use for a variety of different things. I have a couple full-time staff as well. But we're all remote. And so we kind of just do whatever we want as long as people are holding each other accountable, right? Everyone's working hard. The business is running smoothly. Then I give all of my employees, 100% freedom to do whatever they want from wherever they want, whenever they want to take days off, they can, right? It's just it's the environment that I wish I would have been in when I was working for someone else. So I wanted to kind of create that for them. And so, when I'm not working for the 3 months a year in the USA, for the 9 months, I usually am traveling around. And I'm still working, right? Like, it's not like I just throw my laptop in the garbage or anything like that. But I work 2 hours a day instead of, 6 or 8.
Quite the life you live now. I'm sure a lot of listeners aspire to live something similar. So that's very cool. If we were to finish this up with just a few tips for anyone listening, maybe they had a corporate job, they're in the same shoes that you were just a few years ago, or they want to become a digital nomad, or what are a few like parting thoughts you could leave them with?
Sure. I mean, I think finding people who've been successful is very important. And I think it's difficult to kind of dig through all of the noise out there with online marketing, whether it's, Amazon or whatever it is, right? There's always going to be 100 gurus who are saying how amazingly successful they are and how incredible all of their businesses are and things like that. I think it's important to kind of decide for yourself who you think is genuine, who you think you can actually learn from, looking at the data of what they're presenting and seeing if it makes logical sense to you, right? Like, when I was first looking around, I saw a number of different people, who were kind of in the teaching role, yourself included, Scott Volkler, some of the other guys, right? I kind of have forgotten all of the other guys because I made an initial judgment early to focus more on who I personally believed in, who I thought was genuine, who I thought was actually really doing it, which, at the time I felt was you. And so I kind of focused on my learning from what you were teaching. And I think finding a mentor who you believe in, who's making it work, and who you can prove to yourself, has done it is so important, right? Because it's very easy to kind of fall back into your normal routine and your comfortable life and your comfortable situation and routine and things like that. But you need that kind of constant reminder, hey, this is what I want. This person's doing it. Let me see them every single day until I get it, right? Like, if you have to print out a poster of somebody like on your bedroom wall above your head every single day when you open your eyes and you see it and you say, that's what I want. And you create that, right? So I created that, without printing out a big photo of your head, right? You have to find people that inspire you to create the changes, because it's hard. You have to find people who really inspire you to do what's necessary to create the life you want. And, I found a number of different people earlier in my career, and, luckily for me, things worked out. And so my suggestion for people out there is find a community, right? It's so important to have people in the same place. Find a mentor that you believe in. It doesn't have to be one-on-one mentoring. I'm not going to be like calling somebody every single day, but people who are content creators and putting stuff out there. There's a ton of information on YouTube where you can find, all types of different step-by-step tutorials where people are sharing their screens, like for more general high-level stuff, right? The $1 million case study. There's so much information. And so, hold yourself accountable. I needed to hold myself accountable and say, the only reason that you wouldn't make this work is if you didn't do it and you were lazy and you were too lazy. And so I really held myself accountable. I told some people, I think it's very important to establish accountability partners. I said, hey, Kev, like one of my best friends, right? I'm going to quit my job and work for myself in 3 months. Like if I don't do it, like I'm going to send you $1,000 on PayPal. And so I worked my butt off to actually get that done because I didn't want to pay him $1,000. You know what I mean? So find ways to hold yourself accountable, join communities, and find mentors that you really passionately believe in and who you can kind of model your success after.
If the listeners want to learn more about you or anything else you got going on, do you have some resources you could direct them to?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I kind of discovered earlier that my passion was more in kind of the teaching role. I really enjoy, helping people and kind of create, in my opinion, freeing yourself from the 9-to-5 spiral that some people are trapped in. I think a lot of people love their jobs and that's amazing, but a lot of people, too many people get kind of stuck in the monotony that could be a job that they don't enjoy and they're kind of just doing it for money. And so my passion is kind of to help people free themselves from that. And so I started a YouTube channel called That Lifestyle Ninja. And we have, almost 40,000 subscribers now, which has been amazing. I've been able to communicate with so many passionate people who've been, so thankful for what you put out and for what, some of the things I'm putting out. We have an Amazon FBA group now, if anybody is interested. Greg and I both share our groups, right? And I think the number one recommendation for group is Competitive Edge, because I think it's one of the highest quality groups out there. We also have a group called Amazon FBA Ninjas. And so you can find Greg's group in mine, and you can find my group in Greg's. And so, I always recommend people to reach out, right? Never think that somebody's too busy to reach out or to talk to, right? Because I never would have talked to Greg if I didn't message him 7,000 times. So go out and find, figure it out, whether it's me, whether it's Greg, whether it's anyone, right? Don't let anything stop you is my main message. Anyone out there can create the business of their dreams. It just takes a little bit of work and a little bit of, determination.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming on, Kevin. Much appreciated. I'll talk later.
All right, man.
Bye.